named Jim, and I want you to talk about it.
Oh.
It's fun to know. It was funny.
All right, we're live. Do an intro.
I already did it. No, but
Same.
tell me. Seriously.
All right. What was I talking about earlier? Oh yeah. So the gym that I go to,
Yeah.
they. I can hear myself. The gym that I go to, end of last month on June 25th. We were still under lockdown for places like gyms from the governor, and a court here basically lifted that lockdown for gyms. They repealed it, and then the gyms were set to open on the 25th. Is what I mean. The day before, another court basically lifted that or overturned that repeal, or however that worked out, so that the gyms were supposed to close again, or never open up, I should say.
Yeah.
And the gym that I normally go to did open up on the 25th. And then on the 7th, 2 days ago, after they've been operating for a couple weeks now, the city police came and gave them a warning saying, hey, we're still under executive orders, this and that, but you can't be open. And then they voluntarily closed the gym that day for the rest of the day. And then the next day, which is yesterday now, they were open back up. So they closed down, police went home, blah, 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 everything was fine. Then they decided to open back up. And then the police came and raided the gym and ticketed the owner, 2 employees that were working there, and dozen, I think 20 or 30 people that were working out, with citations at up to $1,000 each. I don't know what the citations were for the owners. So there's more to it than I told you. So the lawyer was there. There's news articles in our local news now. The lawyer said that the owner thought that his business is essential, and he's taking all the proper precautions with distancing and hand sanitizer, blah, blah, blah. So he's arguing, saying it's essential. The owner came out and did an interview and said, hey, my competitors, these other gyms, are just getting a ticket and then they're still operating, blah, blah, blah. I thought we were just going to get a $500 fine and being able to continue to operate and be left alone. He said that in the interview.
How did he think that would...
He thought he would just pay a fine and then they would move on. And I'm like, oh, all right. I mean, that's a thing. And then the mayor said, I'm not aware of any other gyms that are open. If there's anything else open in this city, let me know, pretty much.
Whoa.
That's not supposed to be.
So
they're not playing around.
Yeah. So have you been to the gym?
No.
Okay.
No, I planned on going, and I wanted to support them, and I wanted to, kind of spend more money to keep them going. I told you earlier, I bought the whole year membership. I normally do because it's a little cheaper, and I wouldn't ask for months extended or anything free or anything in return or compensation or anything like that. I'd like to support them. I like supporting small businesses, but when you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot here when you're not only did you violate the order, but you were given a warning and then chose to ignore that. And I don't know. And then now they're talking about, we're going to start a GoFundMe to keep the gym alive. I'm like, what do you say? I don't know what to do.
No.
I didn't go because I knew that it was against the current executive order. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's for gyms, not when we have, given the things that are open versus the things that are not open, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because we have some bars, some restaurants and stuff here and there. But,
really?
But I'm like, you can stay out of the gym for a little bit. It's pretty easy. You just go home. So you
still have bars open, but
well, there's they just recently shut down because we started opening everything back up. And that was part of like why the gyms were starting to open back up to begin with. We started opening back up, and then they kind of started locking back down again as the number of daily cases went up. So they started shutting down more stuff, and they just shut down any establishment that has more than 70% of its sales in alcohol sales, which included places like strip clubs and bars. Because strip clubs were opening too. I'm just saying, people were complaining about that.
Oh, about
strip clubs. Yeah, they're like, I can go to a strip club and have a steak and a lap dance, but I can't go to the gym. Yeah.
I mean, it's needed. It's needed, right?
I mean, if you want to complain about that, sure.
That's fun. If a portion of my face kind of looks paralyzed, it's because I had a root canal today. Like just a few hours ago, I literally had a stroke. No, I had a root canal today. I forgot that I was doing a show as well. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to have paralyzed face for a little bit.
Paralyzed face, that's my name.
So if I feel a little self-conscious, that's why.
Are we going to be able to tell if you feel self-conscious?
I'm sorry. If I look like I appear that I'm self-conscious, then that's why. Sorry, I meant to rephrase that. I assume you could subconsciously, or how do you say it?
Your root canal gave us superpowers.
Telepathically sense how I'm feeling, which is numbness because I can't feel a damn thing. Giggler, how are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good.
Other than not being able to go to the gym.
Yeah, dude, I'm heartbroken.
Are you?
It's a great excuse because I wasn't going to go anyway, but now I can say it's because of COVID.
Yeah, I've been buying a lot more popcorn, so that's my anti-gym.
That's the thing. So I wanted to talk about, or have Giggler talk about, his many conversations and free labor that he's been giving to his Mormon friends.
Oh, snap.
Adventures with the Mormon elders.
Yeah. So first off, how did you meet these people?
So it all started going back, I want to say like August of last year, so August 2019. I was out mowing my lawn on a Saturday, and I see these two Mormon missionaries come walking down the street. So I immediately shut off my lawnmower and went out to say hello to them. And we had kind of an impromptu conversation right there on the sidewalk in front of my house. And as I recall, the main question I had for them was, you guys believe that Jesus Christ is here with us? Yes, we do. And you believe he wants me to know he's here so I can believe too? Yes, we do. You believe he's all powerful? Yes, we do. Okay, can he knock my hat off my head? Well, that's not really the kind of thing he does, was their response. So that's where it started. And I thought I was being a little bit aggressive at that point. And so I was delighted when, after the end of that, 10, 15-minute conversation, they asked if they could come back and talk to me again. I said, I would love that. Mm-hmm. And so that was Mormon Elders 1 and 2. And we met somewhere around 10 times over the course of, once a week. And that was the first pair. And then it broke my heart. Pair? That was the first pair. Yeah. It's.
Oh, so you've talked to more than. Oh, yeah. So these aren't the same two. So
I'm on my third pair of Mormon elders right now.
Taking them on in teams here.
Jeez.
One-man army.
So those guys actually broke up with me via text message.
Oh no.
We had agreed to meet the following week, and I got a text that said quite simply, Tom, we've decided not to talk to you anymore.
They could have at least called you. Jeez.
Could have at least called, especially because I had very clearly discussed with them, if you guys don't want to do this anymore, I get it. But let's at least make sure we have one final meeting, even if it's a brief meeting. Let's have some closure for everybody.
You were too much for them.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, honestly.
I mean, that's a classic modern breakup. So, okay.
The other thing is...
Couple number 2.
Well, this is still in Mormons 1 and 2.
This is the dating game.
These are great kids, right? One of them had a severe stutter, right? And he's going door to door to talk to people. That's admirable to some extent, if it weren't for the golden plate nonsense.
I mean, it's brave, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that in some sense. Anyway, so they said they don't want to talk anymore. And I just sort of figured that I'd get kind of blacklisted by their church, because there's actually a Mormon church literally around the corner from my house, which is where they're from. And then out of the blue, I want to say early March, I get a text message. Hey, Tom, we'd like to have a Bible study with you. And I assumed it was the same 2 Mormon elders. Awesome. Absolutely. Come over. So we set up a time and they came over, and they actually brought a more senior member of their church, but it wasn't the same 2 guys. It was 2 new guys. And because they had a more, so this is elders 3 and 4. And because they had a more senior member of the church with them, I think I was a little more confrontational than I would have been if it was just the 2 kids. I hope it's okay to call them kids. They're 19 and 20 years old. But I think I was but because we met the one time and they did not ask to come back. But
Why?
That was also.
Did they give you a reason why?
That's the weird thing, because the night that I met with them was the same night that the NBA canceled or postponed its season. So it's when all this COVID stuff really started happening.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
I'm still not sure. As a matter of fact, when I got to talk to Mormons 5 and 6 who were coming, but they told me that those 2 middle guys, they both had some underlying health conditions that the church was concerned about. So when COVID happened, they were actually sent back home from their mission. So that might be it too. Maybe they did intend to meet with me again.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway, so now.
Couple number 3.
Couple number 3. Yeah, so these 2 kids actually called me instead of texting me. And it's weird because I usually do not answer my cell phone. But for whatever reason, I did. And it was 2 Mormon elders. Hey, Tom, we'd like to come over and meet with you. Awesome, let's do it. And what it is the missionaries had been kind of shut down as far as meeting with people because of COVID. And so the church was just sort of opening up again, not letting them knock door to door, but letting them meet with people they'd met with previously, as long as they followed certain guidelines. So like we sit out in my driveway, we put our lawn chairs 10 feet away from each other, make sure we're safe. And I think Tuesday night, this past Tuesday, was my 3rd meeting with them, possibly 4th, I recall. But I was very disappointed when they came over on Tuesday because one of the guys, elder number 6, I really felt like I was kind of making a connection with. He was nodding a bit more when I was talking than elder 5 was.
Do you have them numbered?
Well, I'm
Well,
sure
I don't want to use their names.
Names.
Yeah, I have their names, but I don't want to use their names. It's challenging because I'm really, really bad with names. Plus, they won't give you their first names. So it's just elder last name.
Oh, okay.
And it makes it really hard for me. Where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. So the elder 6, who I was really making a connection with. And he was the one who he'd kind of nod when I was talking, and he'd respond exactly to what I was saying, where elder 5 would sit uncomfortably and then start flipping through the Book of Mormon to find some passage to read me. Anyway, when they came here Tuesday, elder 6 was not with them. They had replaced him with, it's not like a more senior member of the church, but it definitely appears to be a more senior member of the missionaries. He's at least a couple years older than the other guys I'd met with. And he definitely seemed to take the lead in the conversation. And I'm going to be interested to see if they come back this Tuesday, because given that they took away my favorite elder, I think I was, again, a little more aggressive than I normally would be in challenging them on things.
Okay.
And
so
let me finish elder 6. Elder 6, this more senior guy.
More.
We started the conversation. He goes and he gets a bottle of water. I offered him a drink, gets a bottle of water. Every time I was talking, he couldn't sit still. He kept fidgeting. He never touched the bottle of water he had to drink. I think it just made him really uncomfortable. I feel like I wasn't what he was expecting in the conversation. What he was expecting, yeah.
Because you're aggressive? Or?
Because I think they're expecting people to tell them things like, did you know Joseph Smith's a convicted con man, right? Did you know Joseph Smith forged the Book of Mormon, if not definitely the Book of Abraham? Right. But I never do that with them because they've already heard it. They already have explanations for it. And if I do things like that, I'm just fitting into the characterization they have in their head already of what a non-believer is.
And potentially just driving them away eventually anyways.
Or just kind of falling into a script that they already have prepared for that conversation.
Yeah. I told I think it was the first pair, and I've told each pair of Mormons this at the beginning, is I don't want to have a conversation where you say Johnny has 2 apples and I say Johnny has 3 apples, right? Because now we just have facts that disagree with each other and we have to rely on our own sources and we're never going to get anywhere. I want to have a conversation like, hey, if Johnny has 2 apples, we give him 1 more and we all agree we'll have 3. That's the conversation I want to have. And so I'm trying to avoid all of the, what about this in Mormonism? What about that in Mormonism? Because they're ready for it. They've heard it before. It's not going to be a productive conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a conversation about, aren't you guys concerned about what it means to be in a prophet-based religion, where essentially you're not hearing from God, you're hearing from a person who tells you they're hearing from God. And think about the position that puts you in, and what does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, just to recap, couple number 1 dumped you.
By text.
Via text, which is, fairly modern to do. That's fine.
Yeah.
Couple number 2
With a one-night stand.
was a one-night stand and couldn't meet with you again because COVID. So now you are actively dating couple number 3.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've pretty much set up weekly meets at this point?
Every Tuesday night. Yeah.
Where do you meet at?
With the first pairs of elders, we usually sat on my porch because my wife and kids are in the house. It's noisy and crazy in there. But we've got some nice furniture on the porch. We sit on the porch and talk. With this last pair, because of COVID, we're sitting in lawn chairs in the driveway, very far away from each other.
Yeah,
it's just safer that way.
Yeah.
But then inevitably they wind up handing me a Book of Mormon to read, or a phone to
6
read
feet.
some scripture or something.
Okay.
Do they toss it?
Do they what?
Toss the book to you?
No, we're handing things back and forth. It is interesting to me, and it's weird to say that I admire the reverence these guys have for that Book of Mormon. Admire is definitely not the right word, but maybe it kind of gets the idea across, where you can just see that the way they hold this thing, that they're really convinced that this is the perfect word of God.
It's not upside down like the Trump photo op.
Yeah, and have you guys read the Book of Mormon?
No.
It's ridiculous. If you ever get your hands on a Book of Mormon, flip open anywhere in it, and in I would say any page you open to, you're going to find the phrase "and so it came to pass" 4 or 5 times easily. That's all it is. And so it came to pass. Blah 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 blah. And so
when did you start reading?
When
did you start reading?
I haven't actually read it.
Oh.
They want me to read it, but
well,
I have flipped it open to verify. It's just plus I know the story, right? The story of the Book of Mormon is that. Thanks,
I love it.
The story of the Book of Mormon is that ancient Jews, right, sailed to the Americas and became the Native Americans, right? But we know that's utter nonsense, right? It's just, and this is why I enjoy talking to Mormons so much, because of all the different Christian type religions you can look at. Mormonism has to be one of the most obviously fraudulent, right? It just didn't happen that way. The Book of Mormon talks about horses in the Americas, right? Mm-hmm. There were no horses in the Americas modern day prior to the arrival of Europeans, but they're convinced there were. And I said that I don't like to throw facts at them, but one time I kind of ventured out a little bit, and because they had given me a picture Book of Mormon for my son, and so I'd flipped through it. Mm-hmm. And so I said, hey guys, I flipped through that picture Book of Mormon, and I noticed there was horses in it. But horses aren't native to the Americas prior to the arrival of Europeans. And one of the elders, he said, oh, you haven't heard? That's been totally debunked. And he went to dig into his backpack to show me the evidence that had been totally debunked. And as he's digging through his backpack to show me this evidence, I'm thinking, okay, do I keep going with this? Do I let it go? And as he's still bent down in his backpack, he says, and elephants too. And I said, okay, and let it go. But that's where these guys are coming from. Right?
Wow.
They're so convinced this stuff is, and it's so wrong.
So are you having these conversations with these guys to prove them wrong, or you're just trying to find an understanding of why they believe?
Yeah.
This.
I will honestly say, for these particular kids I'm talking to, if they leave and decide to leave Mormonism, I'm not convinced I've done them a favor. Honestly, it's going to change their lives forever. It's going to change their relationships forever. Luckily, I think it's very unlikely I'll be able to do that, because if I thought I could convince them to leave Mormonism, I'd probably think twice about talking to them. That's a big thing. It's a big thing to take that away from somebody. Well, I'm lucky in that I don't think I can, so I don't think I have to worry about it.
Huh.
So I think a lot of times when people leave these particularly cultish sects of religion that are like a smaller denomination of Christianity, they leave it for more mainstream Christianity first, and then slowly back away from that over time. But it's not gonna. I mean, I don't know how it's set up. I know some of these are set up to where if you leave this particular church, then that cuts off your whole social group. But normally when they do leave, they don't kind of go cold turkey.
So I've heard that story from many people who have a deconversion story. They'll leave Christianity or some more extreme form of Christianity and either go into some less extreme form of Christianity, something more non-denominational, or even go into like paganism, spiritualism, Eastern religion, those kinds of things. Because they've come to the conclusion that what they were taught is not true, but they still have a hold on that spiritualism. So I understand that happens. But from all of the former Mormons I've heard from, that doesn't happen in Mormonism. And the reason is, when you're growing up as a Mormon, they are spending a fair amount of their time shitting all over every other religion and telling you what's wrong with them. So by the time you leave Mormonism, you've already been convinced that all the others are nonsense. So there's no reason to go to those. It's really interesting.
But I feel like, I know when I was a Baptist, I feel like, well, I mean, I think the most heaviest thing to shit on for Baptist Christians is Islam. Islam. Yeah, thank you. Muslims. Islam. So, but ironically, especially if you happen to go to prison, says my Sunday school teacher, that if you're a Black Christian and you go to prison and then you convert to Islam, then that happens.
In your experience, Jenna, when they were crapping on Islam, were they really getting into what Islam doctrine is in a factual sense? Or they're just made a straw man and said, look, they just presented it as though Islam is obviously wrong without telling you a thing about it.
That and the classic straw man and what they see like in the media and stuff like that, and how, they're
as a young Mormon, you're going to learn about all the real problems with papal succession, and there's real problems with that. So you'd never think of becoming a Catholic. You're going to learn about all the problems with Martin Luther, and that's going to get rid of most of Protestantism for you. So they're really good at doing that. And I think part of the reason they do that is that to a Mormon, Mormonism is not a new religion, right? Even to a Jehovah's Witness, they could sort of see themselves as a new religion, something that started in the early 1900s. Mm-hmm. To a Mormon, Jesus Christ was a Mormon. And every other religion that exists was predestined to exist by God for a reason.
To get to Mormonism?
Yes.
Huh.
So, and it's interesting because one of the things I will do when talking to a Christian is point out the problems of all these different Christians believing so many different things, right? But you can't do that with a Mormon because that fits the narrative they have. That after the last of Jesus' apostles died, Heavenly Father sent us into the great apostasy and intentionally confused the Christian religion. And his plan was that Joseph Smith would find these golden plates and restore the 1-2 church.
Okay.
Is that explanation part of the doctrine, or is this like so this was like written into the books, like
Mormon doctrine,
a way to explain away all of the other religions?
Yeah. And Joseph Smith was clearly not an idiot. Problem is, he kind of was an idiot in that he didn't really plan well for the church after he was gone, So the Book of Abraham is a great example if you don't know that story. If you do, I won't go into it.
No, I mean, I know, but
I don't.
Joseph Smith, in addition to the golden plates, he got his hands on some Egyptian papyrus. And at the time, we hadn't yet found the stone?
Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone. Hadn't found it yet, and so we hadn't cracked the hieroglyphics, so nobody could read it. Joseph Smith claimed to be able to translate it, and he translated it into the Book of Abraham, which is all sorts of stories about Prophet Abraham. Well, not long after that, we did find the Rosetta Stone, and we did manage to translate it, and it has nothing to do with Abraham, right? It's basically, as I understand it, it's a stock list for a tomb, is what it basically is.
A shopping list.
Yeah, so
These are the items I need.
Inventory.
This should be a problem. How do you get around it? And Joseph Smith, if he thought this religion was going to last 200 years, he probably wouldn't have done that because it's too risky, right? What he should have done is translated it and then gotten rid of it like the golden plates, or, pretended that it never existed. Well, made it up in the first place. But the way Mormons get around this, their official doctrine, is that, well, Joseph Smith wasn't literally translating these texts, but just looking at them gave him an opportunity for reflection, and that's when God revealed to him the Book of Abraham. It's an obvious dodge. It's a problem unless you've been indoctrinated into the belief.
Mormons are smart.
This is where the show Supernatural I'm sure they get a lot of from these stories. Like when the prophets are reading the tablets, they're not actually reading the tablets; they're looking at them and then getting a signal from God of what the message is. Yeah,
and Mormons are interesting because the Mormon Church always has a current prophet. Like in Islam, they believe that Muhammad was the last prophet. There will be no more prophets.
Right.
Mormonism have like the opposite idea. There's always a current prophet. Whoever the president of the Mormon Church is, God is speaking to him.
That's like the Pope.
Audibly.
So, yeah, I was going to say.
No, not like the Pope at all. Pope is a very different concept. People hear papal infallibility, and they think that means anything the Pope says must be true. But papal infallibility is actually a doctrine that the Pope may enact on occasions when he wants to. It doesn't apply to every word that comes out of his mouth. He has to specifically apply that doctrine of papal infallibility. And you can imagine it doesn't happen very often. Because the moment you say, God told me this, and then it comes out you were wrong, it's going to be bad for your religion. Although it hasn't been for Mormons, which is really amazing. Because they also have this notion that the prophets who were wrong about things, that's because they mistook their own visions for God.
Just keep piling on the excuses as you go.
It really is.
Wow.
It really is. It's a fascinating
unshamefully too. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, with no shame at all. Yeah. And so we have to trust the prophet because God's speaking to him. But the prophets we know can be wrong sometimes. That doesn't. What do we do with that? But they find a way to be okay with it.
So the new president of the Mormon Church, is that what you pretty much said is the current prophet?
He's the current prophet. Yep.
So how do they decide that?
There's also, in addition to the prophet, there's 12 apostles in the Mormon Church. And that's the head guys in the church. So just like the Catholic cardinals pick a new pope, the Mormon prophets pick.
So it's like
Mormon apostles.
A political thing. They vote them in.
Yeah, and usually what they'll do is they'll just pick the oldest guy. So usually these guys don't even take office until they're well into their 70s. Which
like the US.
Explains a lot when you look at how backward some of their social policies are. I've heard people say that the Mormon Church is going to accept gay marriage. It's just going to take another 20 years until all this older guard dies off, and the younger people step in and go, "Come on, guys, we got to get with the times." And the church has gotten with the times how many different occasions, right?
They're just like 20 years behind the mainstream politics.
Well, yeah, they gave black people the priesthood in 1978, right? Which is about 20 years slow when it comes to civil rights stuff. Or the beginnings of civil rights. Wasn't that, I want to say mid-60s? It was 2 decades later. Yeah.
Roughly, yeah.
Were they, did they allow black people into their churches
yes.
prior to that?
Yes,
or,
they just couldn't have the priesthood until 78.
Until 78.
Which means they couldn't get into the temple, I believe.
Yeah. You can't. Then you're definitely secondhand.
I was surprised to discover, and I didn't know, that a Mormon church is different than a Mormon temple. I didn't realize that. I always thought that every Mormon church had like a temple room in it, a secret room you couldn't go into.
Do you mean to say like the temple that's like in Utah temple versus a regular Mormon church like here in California, or what do you mean by
So there are Mormon churches, which is your standard go to meeting Sunday church.
that? Okay.
And then there's several temples. As a matter of fact, here in my town, they just built one about 10 years ago. And it looks like something you'd see in Utah, right? It's this very impressive building.
Yeah.
Big golden trumpet player on top of it.
Beautiful phallic being, yes.
Prior to them building that, people who were here around the Inland Empire, for the temple ceremonies, they had to go to San Diego. That was the nearest temple for them at that point. Now we've got a temple here too. But the temple is where they have the secret rooms that only Mormons in good standing can go into. And that's where they do some of the Masonic type rituals.
That's where they're making the decisions of where to put all their millions of dollars they have in the stock market.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm pretty sure that probably only happens at the very highest levels.
Very good standing.
Yeah.
So I just looked it up because when I was in the Navy in Hawaii, they have a Mormon temple there, and they actually have like 5% of the population is Mormon, which I imagine is fairly large for any place that's not Utah. But the what is that place called? They have a really popular the Polynesian Culture Center, which is a really popular culture center. They do displays of activities on all the different islands from Polynesia. They do a fire dance at the end. They do like a luau. They have food. They do everything. It's like a whole day, 2-day event, and it's really popular, really touristy. I've been there a couple times. And the only way you would even know that it's Mormon is they don't serve alcohol. They don't. There's no obvious display from what I've seen. There's nobody trying to recruit you or anything. For the most part, what they do there is they hire college students, especially a lot of local Hawaiians, and to work there in the summer or after school or whatever to make money and get scholarships and stuff. So as far as that goes, they're, from what I can tell, they're pretty helpful. But then they have a temple nearby, and they own a big portion of Oahu and the northern side of the island, northeastern side.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you wouldn't even know it unless you've kind of been there and been familiar with it.
It's my understanding that in the Mormon Church, and this probably explains a bit as to why they have so much money, that when you meet with your bishop, you bring your tax returns to show that you're indeed giving your 10%.
That's what I want to ask. Yeah.
Nope.
You open your books. And as a
Nope.
matter of fact, to get into the temple, which is a big thing for them, to have access to the temple and be a Mormon in good standing.
Their membership fee?
No, but you have to be a member in good standing, which includes making sure you've paid that 10% by bringing in your tax documents to prove
Dang,
it.
see, they had an opportunity to raise that rate to 15 or 20. Nope. He wanted to keep it 10.
So basically, your membership application is presenting your W-2s, and then your membership fee initially is just paying that 10% of your income, and then continuing with that fee every month.
Yeah. My wife was a little bit concerned that these guys are going to talk me into being Mormon. And I said, don't worry about it. She said, why? And I said, because at some point, they're going to ask me to write a check for 10% of my income. And the moment I write that check and look at it, yeah, I'm not becoming Mormon.
Isn't that interesting, though, how she would be concerned? As if, and that's projecting, right? What she's saying is if I was in your position, I would be, there's a chance that I could be persuaded or believe the things that they're telling me. Whereas you would almost, there's like almost no chance, 0% chance that you would ever believe that. But so she's it's just interesting how when somebody's kind of already believing in these things that they're just the likelihood of it continuing is more than it should be.
That's a good question. Is that a way to get Trump to disclose his tax return?
Yeah, if he can be the president of if he could be the president of Mormonism,
We're gonna make a Mormon. We're gonna see his W-2s.
So didn't we just get a ruling from a judge about those?
That they can pursue it.
Yeah.
He didn't order that. Yeah, he didn't order them to show it, but there's the DA in New York and Manhattan, I think, is
right.
Suing him for it, and then the other one, I don't remember who it is. Something about charities, the Democratic
Foundation.
Yeah.
Interesting. What was our question? Explain the caffeine.
Oh,
because apparently, please go with that one. Because we know they can't drink alcohol, and we know they can't drink tea or coffee if they have caffeine.
I know they can have Dr. Pepper.
Doesn't matter if they have caffeine or not.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
It's a temperature thing?
Black tea and coffee are out, regardless if it's regular or decaf. Coca-Cola is fine, even with the caffeine.
I have
no objection to caffeine.
I have a good friend.
Black tea and coffee.
I have a good friend who him and his wife are Mormon, and they drink a lot of Dr. Pepper.
They're trying to get it in. So, wait, why? So what's the reasoning? I know I've asked you this, but I want you...
It's so interesting because people always ask me that when I point out that the Mormons have a rule against black tea and coffee, but caffeine is fine. And people always say, why? And I always feel like I don't need to ask them. They're in a cult, and the leader guy says, don't do it, so they don't do it.
Fair.
It's that simple. There's not a lot of logic behind it. But enough people had asked me that question that I did finally put it to them. And basically, I think it's in the Doctrine and Covenants, which is another one of their holy texts from Joseph Smith, where it specifically talks about how to stay healthy. And that's where he specifically says you shouldn't put these things in your body. And there's a list of things where it includes...
so it's a certain list. So, okay. So to clarify, really, it's not the fact that it has caffeine. It's the fact that it's a dark beverage. But Dr. Pepper... Okay.
Well,
that's you beat me to it.
Oh.
What was that?
It wasn't invented yet.
Gotcha.
Okay. There's a whole bunch of new stuff that was, not on the list. I'm sure there's a lot of good drugs that aren't on there.
It's the problem with your holy
Clever.
book, your ancient holy book having a list of rules, right? It's tough to update.
I feel like the leader at that time was just like, no dark beverages, but I really got a sip of this Dr. Pepper one day, and we should just add that to the list of okays. And they just kind of just went with it.
There's been a couple times with the different elders that I've met with that I've brought up something problematic, and just seeing the distressed look on their faces, I say, you know what? Let's table that one. We'll come back to it. Just kick that aside, because I know that these are things they've heard before. These are things they've dealt with before. They're going to go through their routine, and ultimately, it's not all that interesting, right? They have workarounds for it. I'd much rather focus on, how do you guys know? Someone's telling you something. Someone's giving you a book and saying God wrote it. How do you know? And they come back and they say, well, Tom, you need to go read the Book of Mormon, go to a quiet place and pray really, really hard, and you'll feel that burning in your bosom. And I said, guys, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that. They said, why not? And I said, because it'll probably work. And they said, what? Why would you not do it if you think it might work? Well, it worked on you guys, right? Yeah. It worked on my Jehovah's Witness friends too. And it worked on my Muslim friends.
Because I feel like that same line.
Yeah.
That same line can be applied to any religion. Like I've been told that too. Like when I had concerns about my faith at one point or whatever, and they were like, read this so-and-so scripture or text, get yourself alone, focus, have that personal time with you and Jesus, and just pray. I'm like, or fast, that too. I'm like that. So it's the same line that.
And it really feels like, how do I know? Well, you start by believing and then you'll know. Well, that doesn't seem like a good way to go about it.
So you make yourself think, okay, Jesus is real. He's right in front of me. I see his face.
And I'm starving.
And
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Gotta be hungry to meet Jesus.
Hypoglycemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Seeing mirages. Dehydrated.
I haven't eaten in like a week.
There's an alien friend who wants me to do something called the atheist prayer experiment, where, you know, as an atheist, you pray once a day for 30 days. And I told him the same thing. I'm not going to do that.
That's actually
it's so utterly ridiculous.
But if you think about it, it's just a form of meditation.
Right. And it's a technique that works in getting you to believe something, right? It worked on them. It'll probably work on me. It doesn't make it real. It just means, especially with the Mormons, they've really identified something in human psychology that they can use as the evidence of their religion. Oh, just go to a quiet place and keep talking to yourself in your head and you'll hear an answer. Well, what if that's just a thing that happens to humans when they talk to themselves in their heads for too long? They start hearing an answer.
See, now I'm convinced that Mormons are the smart version of Christians. I'm convinced now because they
You'd be surprised. You know, another thing I will usually hit Christians with is the problem of an eternal hell as a place of eternal torture. That's a big problem for Christians. So much so that most of them are letting it go, right? No, hell's just a separation from God and that kind of thing. Mormonism has no hell as a place of eternal torture, right? So in Mormonism, there's 3 levels of heaven, and bad people get the worst level of heaven. But it's still heaven, right?
I like this place.
There's an interesting caveat with that, and that is there is one way to wind up in hell as a place of eternal torture, and that is to be a Mormon and then stop being a Mormon. And you get the eternal hell.
So hell doesn't exist until you stop believing.
If you're a Mormon and then you stop believing, you get the eternal hell. Otherwise, you get a 3rd level of heaven in the worst case scenario.
Do you also go with the Muslim apostates? Are they in the same hell, or
they'd be but keep in mind, well, no, not apostates, but people who are Buddhists, right? They're still part of the great apostasy. They just got even further from real Christianity, from the position of Mormons.
Interesting.
So are they in the real hell? Or are they just in the worst heaven?
they're all
the worst heaven.
Everybody that doesn't believe.
Do you guys know what the best level of heaven is for Mormons?
Get your own planet?
If you happen to have a penis.
Damn. I was going to say
Mario, depending on whether or not you do.
I was gonna ask you to explain the 3 tiers, but yeah.
You can only go to number 2.
I'm a little iffy on the 2nd tier. I know the 3rd tier is kind of what Jehovah's Witnesses believe about where most people will wind up, which is like a glorified earth, right? So you'll still have to eat and poop and whatever, but you'll live forever in a glorified earth.
Damn. Yeah. Do you still age? Do you choose the age in which you want to be?
Yeah, I don't think you age anymore, but do you get to choose?
I could use a little bit more gray, but not too much.
So, first,
can I go back to when I was 25?
Right. If you're someone they identify as male, you become a god, right? You become a god. You get to have your own planet. You get to populate it with spirit babies with all of your celestial wives. And I told these guys, I said, I'm going to be honest. If I were to find out Mormonism were indeed true, I can't say I'd be disappointed, right? I mean, it doesn't sound too bad to me.
Man.
There's certain religions
that great white man.
Certain religions people are again. When I would become
living your best life twice. Damn. Okay. So
here's the really fun thing in that. Since humans can become gods, right? What does that tell you about where Heavenly Father came from? He used to be just like us, and then he earned the celestial kingdom. So to them, it's this continual cycle.
Oh, so we're just
spirit
babies?
Oh, so is Jesus the God of this earth, and we're his celestial babies? Did I get that right?
No, Heavenly Father is the God. Jesus is his most important son. Satan is his 2nd most important son.
So we're spirit babies.
We're spirit babies, yeah.
Who are the celestial wives?
Who are the celestial wives?
Yeah.
That's a good question. This is where they have a problem with the fact that they've stepped away from polygamy, but they still have this notion they have many celestial wives. So I'm not quite sure where they're coming from.
Okay, I'm going to dial back to polygamy. But so what's the 2nd tier, if you know?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the 2nd tier. Something in the middle. There's a lot of videos on it where they explain it. And it's actually like Mormon propaganda videos, so you know that they're giving you the official Mormon opinion on it. But the fact that I know I've watched it and I don't recall means it's probably not that interesting.
It's average, somewhere in between.
It's a place to chill.
Yeah.
Don't get to become God.
Okay, so what's the third one?
The celestial kingdom, right? No, that's the first one. The highest one is celestial kingdom. The lowest one is the glorified earth.
So this.
Yeah, this basically, where you don't get old and a little bit better.
Okay. Gotcha.
Everyone's a vegetarian.
What?
No, I don't know. I made that up. Seems like they have to have that.
I got offended. I'm sorry. Can't live like that. Okay. What was I gonna ask?
Why do you think that they spend time talking to you?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Well, because it started because you actively went out and talked to the first couple.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of just escalated from there. But yeah.
Why do they keep coming back? I don't know.
Do you think that they're convinced that they're going to
turn you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm convinced that they are thoroughly convinced that what they're saying is true. And if that's the case, of course they think they're going to convince me it's true, right? They know it to be true. They know that if I would just read that book and say a prayer, I'd get the burning in my bosom, and then I could join them knocking on doors. And that's the wild thing is I strongly suspect somebody in the upper echelons of the Mormon church is just flat out dishonest, but it's not these kids, right? Okay. These guys are sincere. Now they're being taught some pretty insincere tactics. Like I noticed, because I find this notion that God used to be a person like us, and then he lived a good life, and he got the celestial kingdom, and he became a god, and he happens to be our God living on the planet Kolob, blah, 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 blah. But I find that story really interesting. But I've noticed that when I ask Mormons specifically about it, these Mormon elders, they tell me, well, we don't know what the origin of God is. But I didn't ask you if you knew. I asked you what you believed, and you said, well, we don't know. And so I think that's just their way of dodging that question, because I think the people they're trying to convert, for the most part, have some, in this country, have some familiarity and maybe even some sympathy for Christianity. And if you tell those people that God used to be a person who picked his nose, right, that's just going to turn them off completely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a lot of people do that when you ask about their beliefs. Then they will go to, I don't know for sure, or I can't prove it without a doubt. I'm like, well, we're not talking about that. We're, what do you believe, right? You can reasonably believe something without having 100% confidence in it, or without having like undeniable proof for it. You still believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't want to defend it, they'll resort to that.
Right.
It reminds me a little bit of Scientologists in that Scientology does not want to come right out and tell you right off the bat what they actually believe, because you would run screaming from them. And Mormonism has some of that baggage to carry because they're so...
Well, Mormonism's like that with magic underwear and your own planets and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to that in month 3 or something like that.
I wouldn't mind getting my own planet.
Once you've bought into your own planet and spirit babies, magic underwear is not that bad.
No, not at all. So, polygamy. Have you asked them about that?
That one doesn't really interest me that much, because I think it's something where I know more about it than they would as 20-year-old men, right? I know that when Utah wanted to become a state, Congress said, not unless you outlaw polygamy. And luckily enough, around that same time, God gave a new revelation to the current prophet. Hey, we should get rid of this polygamy stuff. Like literally God bowed to pressure from Congress, but they just see it as a wonderful coincidence.
Yeah. And you actually brought me back to my question. Whenever they elect this new president, basically, I'll just say that, does the doctrine change, or does stuff get added on to the doctrine as a new person comes in?
Yeah. Because he is the current prophet, he can make any changes that he says God told him to make.
That's
and it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So there are a few splinter groups, right, that have come off, like the FLDS. That's what I think of when I think of polygamy, of current, news. Are there many others, or is it if you had a percentage that you could, or do is it mostly just vanilla Mormonism, and then there's, that's your 5-gallon bucket, and then there's a pint of this and a pint of that.
I think it's something like 90-ish% of what we call Mormons are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the organization we're all familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere closer to 10% is, they just changed their name, Community of Christ. And these are the ones who, when Joseph Smith died, instead of following Brigham Young as the new leader, they followed Joseph Smith Jr. I think it was the third. But they followed Joseph Smith's son instead. Because, of course, Joseph Smith dies at a young age, didn't think he was going to die that early, hadn't made any plans for succession. And so there was a schism in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, if you really look at it honestly, you realize that Joseph Smith had every intention of handing over control to his son. And Brigham Young basically saw an opportunity to
I wonder, yeah, and I wonder if that did happen with the secession of the new head of the church just be, within the family.
I find it really interesting that parallels so perfectly what happened in Islam when Muhammad died, right? That's why we have the Shiites and the Sunnis. And there's other parallels with Joseph and Muhammad. They both found the new revelation from God that builds on the Old and New Testaments. What's interesting is you will find people who will say Joseph Smith actually said that his intent was to become the American Muhammad. And he certainly has done that. Yeah. The only real fundamental difference is that they have that current prophet idea, where Islam doesn't.
What do you think of the fact that over 16 million people believe in this?
It's terrifying.
Why?
It's absolutely terrifying.
Millions
Because
of people.
It's so palpably false, right? It's so obviously wrong, but they've been convinced to believe it. And I kind of get the people who were raised in it, right? The people who are in that community, I get it. It's the fact that they are successfully converting otherwise rational people. That's what really terrifies me. Justin said a minute ago that there was a 0% chance of me becoming a Mormon. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think it's pretty small, but I'm not going to say it's zero.
It's small enough that you're not concerned about talking to them, right? That was kind of the point I was making.
I don't think I'm going to become a Mormon. I don't think they're going to leave Mormonism, but I definitely think that it's more likely they'll leave Mormonism than I'll become Mormon.
Right.
I think both things are vanishingly small odds.
In the last couple of years of my sister's life, she converted to Mormonism. And she got baptized. I was there, big old hot tub, walk in. And that was one of the things when I was talking to her afterwards. She was just kind of explaining her thinking and stuff, and she was mostly concerned about community. She talked a lot about going to Hawaii, but she took a little bit of time there. But yeah, in that, and I find this to be sad and unhealthy that she would see them as she had a free ticket to family to support because she was on the rolls. No matter where you go, you have family there because there's a church, there's a Mormon church.
Yeah. What was your sister previous to that?
Couple different versions of Christianity. There was a Church of the Nazarene they were going to quite a bit until the pastor was sent to jail for sexual relations with his daughter. So she left that church, and that's I think when she went over to Mormonism. Yeah. But it was, I don't know. They definitely have congregated in my old hometown. They seem to like to have nice places, and nice cars, and nice. What is it about Mormonism? I guess there's a whole spectrum of course, like every religion of demographic, but they definitely seem to want to show a prosperous kind of look.
If yeah, that I've thought about this too because reflecting on obviously the Black church, right? The only one that looks so lavishly well off is the pastor. Everyone else, they still, dress up and, look like, fancy and stuff. But for the most part, the one with all like the gold rings and looking all flashy and drives a nice car and everything is the pastor. Whereas when I see Mormons, and I can see how, given that, with Black churches, with the Black community, there's still a lot of, struggle and people still not doing well, but they still keep their faith because, God got them or whatever. But with Mormons, it seems like their God got them the most because everyone's well off. So that seems a bit more appeasing to be like, oh, if I'm a Mormon, I'm just going to live my best life to the max because I can drive and look just as good as my preacher. But I know that's not like the absolute case or reason, but it just seems more appealing.
Yeah.
Way more appealing.
Yeah. I was when Malty was talking about how they seem to be very well presented. That reminded me of when I was working in Detroit. The Kingdom Halls for Jehovah's Witnesses. They were some of the most well kept and cleanest, nicest properties like in the city. Because there's a bunch of them around the city, and like it'd be a really bad neighborhood with a lot of rundown houses, abandoned buildings, this and that. But like they have like perfectly green, well manicured grass and edged lawns, and the church is like absolutely perfectly maintained. Every person that goes in and out of there is in a suit or a dress, like very traditional clothing, and when they talk to you, they're like very well mannered, and I'm sure that's part of the draw to, especially in that type of neighborhood, to kind of get people out of the hood, to recruit them to your better life, or and I'm sure a lot of people go into it for that. They see something better. They better than what they see as themselves at the moment, and then they start kind of disbelieving because they feel like, if I believe this, maybe it'll improve my life and I'll get to that status.
Wow.
That'd be an interesting question to ask them, is if Mormonism has any notion of I'm not sure how I'll phrase it to ask them, but like a prosperity gospel, or if you're a good Mormon, God's going to reward you financially in this life. Because I know my wife's church, that's definitely the case.
Well, even if it's not the gospel,
you're going to raise.
Even if it's not the gospel, when you see so many people that are more well off than you would only assume that if you behave like them and act like them and believe what they believe, that you would start to reap the same rewards.
These guys that you're talking to, they're on mission. Have you talked to them about what the change is going to be? What is mission like now in the age of COVID?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did talk about it. Currently, they are not allowed to go door to door, and they're not allowed to ride their bicycles while wearing their official Mormon uniform of white shirt and
sandwiches in it.
Because the church is afraid that if people see them riding their bikes around like normal, they're going to think they're knocking on doors like normal, which they're not doing. I think.
Oh, okay.
I would do that if I ran the church. They're allowed to meet with people who they've already established a relationship with. So they're going. That's probably. I mean, COVID is probably why they came back to talk to me, because I was on the phone list.
Yeah,
I think they'd have been back.
You're a willing contestant.
Yeah.
But they're not allowed to ride their bikes around in their Mormon uniforms, and so they've actually been driving a car over here, which kind of surprised me. First time they pulled up, I said, "Hey, you guys are cheating. Where's your bikes?" But they happen to have access to a car. But if they didn't have access to a car, they'd have to ride over in different clothing and then change into their Mormon uniforms once they got here.
What?
Which I think is unfortunate, because I think that means they have to put like a shirt or sweatshirt over the Mormon uniform, ride their bikes over here in.
The Mormon uniform is like just a white shirt with a tie and slacks, right?
Yep. So
And
they
then
put a shirt over it.
is the bike helmet part of the uniform, or is that like an
Well,
accessory?
I was
It's safe,
I was
Justin.
surprised to see that when they came over here to do yard work that one time, they did wear their name badges. They were in
Okay.
civilian clothing otherwise, but they did wear their name badges.
They did yard work with you.
They did yard work with me.
They
I've
did.
taken a lot of shit about it.
Wow.
So wait.
That's
Before I
cool.
get to that,
Yeah.
that is cool though.
There's
But
nothing wrong with that.
no, not at all.
It's,
Before I
there's
get,
still they're still part of your community, though, right? Like you said, the church is around the corner. Like all the religious stuff aside, it's community building.
yes, but a person took issue with the fact that it was stupidly equated to like unpaid labor, quote unquote, the S word. But which is
On whose
ridiculous.
part? And their part?
Yeah,
Why?
I don't know.
Actually, the
I just
specific,
simply, yeah, I just
specific
simply said,
comparison
yeah, go
is
for it.
not. I don't think it's a thing you're thinking about. The specific comparison was it's like statutory rape. Was the specific comparison that I got.
Yeah, that
And that these guys don't have the ability to give consent to come mow my lawn because they've been fully indoctrinated to think that they have to.
Did you
So it's
tell
kind
them?
of like a sexual act with a child where even if the child is enjoying it and okay with it, it's still wrong because the child's too young to give consent.
Wait, so somebody's saying that they pretty much have to do whatever you tell them to do because they feel it's part of their mission to complete these requests in order to convert you.
So when Mormon missionaries are on their mission, they actually aren't just knocking on doors converting people. There's two halves of their mission. Knocking on doors, converting people, that's one of them. But the second half of it is to what they call, I think they call it being in service or something like that. But literally, they're looking for people who they can do yard work for. If you're moving, they want to help you. They want to go help people in the community. That's part of what they're
Now,
supposed to do.
is that part of it with the end goal of converting somebody? Like, and if you didn't convert them, you failed, or is that part of it, part of like a community service, being good for the community and just doing good acts?
Depending on how cynical I want to be about it, I can either tell you that it's really about helping the community, or it's about making the Mormon church look good in the eyes of a lot of people they're doing this work for. That's the more cynical answer.
And
I mean, it's probably true, but what's wrong with that?
well, helping, I would say that the division of labor for the community of your fellow Mormons to the greater community on large would not be equal.
By the way, if you're talking about having Mormons work for you, I just want to let everyone know, if you're ever moving and you could use a few extra hands, call your local Mormon church. They would be delighted to send a crap load of people to your house to help you move.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
they don't proselytize when they're doing that stuff.
See, that's
So
what
the most
that's
they
what-
might do is invite you to their church the following Sunday, but that's all they're going to do.
That's what I'm saying is like even like a lot of Christians won't even give you like food if you're starving to death without proselytizing to you. And these people are just hanging out and helping and mowing the lawn and helping you move.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to do good things. I mean, they're probably taught to just do good things.
Yeah. So that's why I took an issue and an offense for this said person to say, "Oh, you're just forcing them to do free labor for you." And I'm like, no,
Taking advantage of them. Yeah.
any stranger, this is what volunteer work is, right? This is what,
Mhm.
right? Essentially, that's what it is. It's volunteer work. Any stranger, and these are people you have known and spoken to for a while, but any stranger can just, willingly help someone out. That's what volunteering is.
Right. Like if you volunteer at like a veterans organization where you're giving them food or moving furniture, I mean, are you indoctrinated to helping veterans or to helping homeless people or to helping people in need? Is that slave labor? Are you helpless to deny doing this?
Although I will tell you, in that other person's defense, I knew that helping people like this is a big part of what they're supposed to be doing. And I knew that with COVID, they probably have far fewer opportunities to do that kind of stuff. So I literally went looking around my house for something I could invite them to help me do.
Never mind.
And
You're
I
an
found a
asshole.
project.
I take it all back.
I found a project that I really needed more hands on to help me with. But then I really struggled with whether or not to invite them to do it, because I knew, I was 99% sure if I invited them to do it, they would say yes. And I didn't know how much of that would be they had to say yes versus they really wanted to do it. I didn't know. I still don't.
And you can't tell them like, hey, if you don't want to do this, then don't do it, because they're going to tell you they want to.
Yeah.
So there was a little discussion that you were going to give them pizza money or something. Were you able to pay them at all for their service, for their labor?
We wound up spending about an hour working, maybe actually a little bit less than an hour, because I felt so guilty about inviting them over to do it that I actually did most of the work before they got here. So when they got here, there was very little to do. So in an hour, we knocked out the whole job.
You robbed them of their opportunity.
How dare you?
Well, it was nice because then we got to spend another hour just sitting and talking. My wife, when they got here, went and got the breakfast burritos, nice big ones from Rosa
Did they
Maria.
eat it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And then I sent them home with a pan of my chicken enchiladas, which are really, really good.
When I help people move or clean or do anything, that's all I ask is food. If you feed me, I'll work all day.
There you go.
There was reciprocation.
I mean, just think about it. Like that plate of food, if it's $15 or $20, it's easily an hour's worth of pay anywhere.
Barring a foreclosure, I don't think I'm ever going to move again. But if I do, I'm calling the Mormons. And I'm like,
I'm calling the Mormons.
Mormons want to do it.
I'm looking at where my deer is.
Just need to
Church now.
troll the local Mormon temper with.
Oh my God!
Just put up things on telephone posts.
Yeah.
Bro,
Hook up that hitch to your bike. Let's go.
He's going to open his own Mormon moving company, except they're not even going to be employees. They're just going to be people that he calls when he needs to move stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Mormon number 5, bring 6 and 7. Let's go.
That's not a terrible idea.
Yes, it is. I mean,
They want to do the work. They need to be connected with people who need the work done. I'm just taking a small amount of money for my service. That's fair.
Okay.
I'll pass on the food they offer.
10%.
Wow. Okay. Cool story, bro.
Yeah, we're all going to hell now. Mormon hell, which is actually heaven, so we're good.
Woo!
Yeah. Essentially, we're in it right now.
We strive for the least possible.
I did tell, I don't know if it was this pair of elders or the previous pair. I said, my understanding is the only way to get hell as a place of eternal suffering is to be a Mormon and stop being a Mormon. And they said, yeah. And I said, okay, so my best move as a loving parent is to make sure my kids never become Mormons. They're guaranteed not to burn in hell forever. And they said, oh, yeah.
Yeah, but like
you had a workaround.
Yeah, but 2 and 3 are just so much better than 1 that it's worth it. Worth the risk.
It is worth the risk. Yeah.
3's pretty good. 3's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, spirit babies and celestial wives.
Do you know why Satan is Satan and Jesus is Jesus in Mormonism?
No.
So Heavenly Father had these 2 main sons who were going to help him set up a plan of salvation for his planet Earth. And the devil came up with this plan. Lucifer came up with a plan where in the plan, Lucifer got all the glory for people achieving salvation. Jesus presented a plan where he would actually be crucified, so he would suffer for it, and all the glory would go to Heavenly Father. Heavenly Father liked Jesus' plan a lot better, especially because Jesus didn't make himself the star of the show. Although you could debate that.
Plus, Jesus was giving the dad all the glory.
Lucifer got so angry that now he's actively trying to thwart Jesus' plan.
Yeah, but what about baby Jesus? He's the one that we summon for all of the.
Well, Jesus is baby Jesus. What?
Jesus is baby Jesus.
Baby Jesus like Baby Yoda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing. They're the same person.
Yes. Same guy. I forgot what I was going to say. My numbness.
Another thing that makes it a little tough to talk to these guys is that they're constantly sharing resources with me, but I can't share resources with them, right? So while they're on their mission, they don't have access to YouTube. I can't give them a link to a video. They can't watch it. I can't send them home with things to read.
Why? They don't have a smartphone?
No, they have a smartphone, but it's given to them by the church, and the internet's blocked on it. So they
it only has GPS to your house.
I asked them.
Camera and mic, so they can keep an eye on you.
My wife told me they're not allowed to talk to their families during their 2-year mission, and I thought there's no way that could be the case. And so I asked these guys. I said, "Is it true you guys can't talk to your families during your mission?" And they said, "Well, that's changed a little bit because of COVID-19, and so now we have all sorts of access to our families." I said, "Really?" They said, "Yeah, we get a half-hour phone call every Tuesday."
Jesus, they talk to you more than their families.
Right. Apparently, before COVID,
you are their family now.
They could call their families on, what was it, Christmas and Mother's Day. Was when they could talk to their family.
What's wrong with Father's Day?
So I know, right? Well, I mean, Dad's getting his own planet. He doesn't need me.
Oh, yeah, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, only men. Only men are doing these things, all right?
Dang. Wait, Susan. I've heard you can only do the required social media posts that are part of the mission. Can't verify.
That's in line with what they've told me. Yeah.
Oh. Wow. So you have like a social media account, but you can only post like approved messages?
I don't know that they have access to any social media. I know they have cell phones and then they're texting people.
We're talking about only when they're on mission, right? Not when they're like not.
Right. That. Yeah. This is specifically when you're doing your 2-year mission. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you say you can't give them resources, like you can't just hand them a printout or something, and they won't accept it, or?
You know what? I should try that.
Get a cheap tablet with videos on it. Here you go.
Go old school. Just write shit out.
With elders 1 and 2, at the very last meeting, I was planning on handing them my business cards, with my personal cell and personal email on the back of it. In fact, I've been carrying the cards around since then. But because they dumped me via text message, I never had an opportunity to do that.
See, that's why you set up this plan for one last final meet, so you can get them. See, you were trying to do to them what they're trying to do to you, but they got you first.
That's
what happened. That's why you're so mad. That's why you're mad.
Yep.
They got you first. They dumped you first. I get it.
It is.
So are they moving on? Did I miss this?
No.
Yeah. This is my 3rd pair of elders.
Wait, okay. How are like these? You're talking about? You're calling kids elders?
Must be some one that's above them that is debriefing them. Because I mean, if they keep on sending them in, they're definitely having a little forewarning of what to expect.
Being that the church is right around the corner from my house, I'm almost tempted to think I've become part of the training. Yeah, first we'll send them to Giggler, and if they can get past him, they can handle anything.
They've got his house on the wall and a picture of him on his lawn.
Because you're a willing participant to actually talk to these folks, because any other person would just either close the door, not answer, pretend they're not home, right? I've done that.
Yeah.
But since they got your name in the books, T. Giggler, yep. He's on everyone's radar.
They're not even trying to convert him anymore. He's just a test dummy. They just practice on him.
This is training. You are the training, basically. Every 2 Mormons, every set of Mormons, every few months, just go around and have their word with you. Like this.
If that does become the case, I'm down with it. At some point, I'm going to want my cut of the Mormon chocolate pie.
Like, look. 1% comes here. Yeah, you bring it with you.
Part of that 10% is 1% my income because I'm the training. Wow, that's
1% of Mormonism wouldn't be too bad. That'd be a big chunk of change.
1% of Mormonism. The whole thing.
The whole thing.
It's been nice. Again, it's been nice during COVID because normally they're constantly inviting me to their church, and after I rebuff them several times on going to their church services, then they start to lose interest in the conversation. But now they're not holding church services, so I don't have to say no to that, which is really nice. The only thing I have to do is say, yeah, I tried to read the Book of Mormon, but I was really busy this week, maybe next week.
Yeah, they also have limited victims to go talk to.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose you. They don't even invite. Do they do virtual? They don't even invite you to do virtual with them or anything?
They haven't mentioned that.
They're not a virtual type of church there, Jenna. Not like your church.
That's true. I mean, they did cut off, the 2 Mormon guys' cell phone reception.
Right. They don't even have internet, okay?
Shit.
Who knows? Joseph Smith might have mentioned it specifically in the Book of Mormon. No webinars.
No webinars, no coffee, extra Dr. Pepper.
Dang. So you're meeting them again? You met them this past Tuesday, right?
Yep.
You're meeting them again. Okay, so you.
Oh, like 2 days ago. How'd that go? Was it good?
Yeah.
Like I said, because they swapped out the guy I was really making a connection with for a new, seemingly more senior guy, I was a little bit more aggressive.
So do you feel like a medium boss or like the final boss that they have to get to and defeat before they move on to the rest of the community?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a low level guy.
Like a level boss?
Yeah, I'm level 1.
Okay.
Okay.
Mainly because my approach is I'm constantly complimenting them, but I always make sure that I'm not being dishonest in those compliments. So I will find something I like about them and I will tell them about that. Like,
that's cool.
One thing is, I can tell them quite honestly, you guys appear to be very fine young men, admirable young men, right? You're doing helping people and all that stuff. And I always make a point of saying, I've got 3 young sons. If they grow up to be anything like what you guys appear to be, I consider myself a successful parent, right? And that's true.
Nice.
Now, I'll say to you guys, I have to wonder if I can accomplish that same thing without the golden plate nonsense. I don't know. It seems like you probably could. But
like for your kids, you think you can like steer them into Mormonism, turn them into decent human beings, and then bring them back?
Well, yeah, but then they get the eternal torture, so there's downside.
That's true.
We're just going to use that as a disciplinary like boot camp.
Yeah. Has your wife tried to talk to them at all?
Not about anything theological. She's made them s'mores. She's talked to them about playing piano and piano lessons because one of them plays piano. Yeah, but my wife's not into theology. I don't think she'd even be interested.
Fair.
But if her church were to go bankrupt, she'd probably be a Mormon in a couple of weeks. They'd suck her right in, like Justin was saying.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah, but she's in the background listening in.
Who, my wife?
Yeah.
Oh, for the Mormon conversations?
For the Mormon conversations.
No. She understandably, it's pretty uncomfortable for her to hear those conversations, and she'd rather. And I get
Rather not.
Okay. She gets enough of that crap from me already. She doesn't need
I
to hear me do it to somebody else.
That's fair.
Yeah, I just wonder if they are just leveling up the younger elders to just using you and just doing some farming, leveling up.
Yeah, very, very possible. Although, again, because I do believe that these kids are sincere, I think that they think they can do me a favor by making me a Mormon, and I believe they're sincere about that. I think it turns out they're wrong, but I don't think they're being dishonest. Others have disagreed with me.
They're trying to help you out, bro.
Yeah,
Trying to get you in that third heaven.
That their honesty is, I don't know that is an issue. I'm just wondering about other aspects.
What do you mean? Like they're trying to purposely trick him?
Well, no, that it's that it is so wackadoodle.
Jeez.
If I can
That's
use
putting it mildly.
there's probably a nicer way to say that.
Right.
the term. Yeah, I just don't know.
Well, we'll see. So, you said they rotated one of the guys. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, how do you find that? Can you make you said that your express goal was not deconversion. So I mean, I guess my question might be not be a good one. In that if they're swapping out these kids, can you make any quote unquote progress if they keep on changing the dealer?
Yeah, good question. Good question.
Well, the thing is, though, right? So he's the same. He hasn't swapped out. So on their side, they have the same arguments, the same book, the same everything amongst all the different people, right? So if they swap out the dealer, the player is still the same, and they don't see it as him making progress with them. They see it as them making progress with him. So the dealer doesn't matter as long as the player eventually goes broke.
Mm.
And it's important to remember, these are young Mormons on their 2-year mission, right? If these guys just happen to be my neighbors and we can talk over the fence once a week for a couple years, I could probably convince them of some things, or possibly could. But these kids are at a place where they are currently the most into Mormonism they're probably ever going to be in their whole lives. With First Pair of Elders 1 and 2, I asked both of them that standard street epistemology question. On a scale of 0 to 100, how sure are you that Mormonism is true? And one of them right off the bat said 100, and the other one said, honestly, I'm like at 98. And he said, but I hope by the end of my mission I'll be at 100. And I said, don't worry, you will be. There's no question in my mind you will be. That's what this is all about.
So it's obvious that you're not purposely trying to deconvert. You're not trying to purposely turn them away. You're just, for lack of a better word, curious.
I want to better understand what mechanisms people use to convince themselves to believe things that are just palpably not true. Mm-hmm. It's like talking to a flat earther, right? The difference is, when I talk to a flat earther, I have a very hard time convincing myself that they're actually sincere and they're not just being posed. With these kids, I know they're not just pretending to be Mormons. They believe this stuff.
Do you talk to a lot of flat earthers in person?
No, I don't. Yeah.
See, that's the difference, right? And there's a lot of people that believe like really far out there things, and you can talk to them over the internet, but it's an entirely different environment when they're in person. Like even in video, like the reason I wanted to do this show to begin with is because in video, seeing somebody face to face adds a whole new element to just voice, and voice adds a whole new element than just text. Like each level gives you like they're more likely to be sincere because you can see the insincerity on their face if they're lying to you, or if they're just here to troll, or if they're just bullshitting. You can see it, right? So like when people can see you, or when they're face to face and in person, they're more likely to have like an honest conversation with you, and it's easier for you to see if they're not. So it's a whole different thing when they're there, right?
Yeah.
That separation, it makes it so much easier to lie or troll or just do it because it's fun rather than because you actually enjoy that conversation.
So have you ever talked to a flat earther in real life?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've talked to a flat earther in real life.
Although now that I say that, I've talked to plenty of people who believe in other nonsensical conspiracies.
Yeah, I don't think I've talked to them about. I don't think I talked to a flat earther about flat Earth in real life. I will say that. I'm sure I've talked to people that believe in it because I've talked to people that believe in like really crazy things. But in person, I'm a lot more reserved in what I call out. For some reason, it's just being confrontational. It's really hard in person. That's another thing. It's hard to be that confrontational, that aggressive in person. Because there's a whole added element of violence, of aggression, of retribution, of people know who you are, what you look like, where you live. There's a lot more to it.
I never said I can't say I've ever met a flat earther, but I do know some people who think that Bigfoot does exist. They would go out camping, and the entire 2 weeks afterwards is the yellow eyes they saw up on the hill, and was that Bigfoot. And guess what? There was stuff moved around in the campsite, and when they woke up in the morning, and oh my gosh, and I'm just like, guys, I mean, these guys are adults, married, have a house, stable job.
Yeah, it's kind of wild that they seem like they have their shit together in their whole lives, and they're in like prominent business positions, and just believe in like the most bizarre things you've ever heard of.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Interesting.
Well, they-
So, oh, go ahead, Melty. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say I wouldn't say prominent business position, but he did okay.
Well, that particular person, I'm just saying, like, you know, I come across people online all the time where it's like you're having like a regular conversation with them, and then out of nowhere they're like Agenda 21, you know, microchipping and flat Earth and this and that. I'm like, bro, where did this even come from? Like, who are you? Like, how did? But
Yeah.
this happens all the time. Just people are just get convinced, and it doesn't take a lot. It takes like one core belief to lead them on this pathway where they start believing in everything that adds on to it. So it doesn't take a lot to get started on those paths.
Yeah.
Jenna, what happened? Yes. You just disappeared for a minute.
Yes, I had to. Thank you.
Okay.
Huh?
Did you sneeze? Okay.
No, but my numbness has gone away.
You're
nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I don't feel painful. But anyway,
Did you feel like you're too close for comfort for COVID with your dentist?
Not at all. So when because they let in very few people at a time. So, and then, they, do the social distancing and stuff. I was pretty much the only one in the office for a while. And my procedure, excuse me, took a little over an hour. But, they're gowned up. They have the shield and everything.
Oh, they have face shields?
Yeah. Like almost like double masking essentially. And, it was fine. I was comfortable.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Plus, that had to be handled. So, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
That's too bad. Emergency or something that was starting to go bad?
Oh, yeah, for a few months. And as for a while, it got more and more severe. Like my
Static says, don't forget to like and subscribe. He's reminding us to remind everyone else.
Yes, thank you, Static.
But yes, I've had a tooth go bad. They're definitely not fun.
No. Yeah, this one got really bad. I guess it was a cavity that essentially bore a hole in my back molar, one of my back molars. And then for the while, I had to like medicate myself like every 4 to 6 hours because as much as I could, that was medically safe, right? Because the pain was just aggravating and it would just shoot up from like to like my eye to like the side of my brain. It was like that aggravating just on this side alone. So yeah, it was like popping Tylenol like nobody's business.
So Tub says, I don't think being able to see a person makes a ton of difference in terms of having an honest or reasonable conversation. I think it only offers surface level protection from aggression. I mean, I disagree in that it will automatically weed out people who are only there to troll or who are only there to get a rise out of you because you can instantly see that. So it's if somebody is like in for the long or the deep con, then no. But for all of your like lower level trolls, people that have no interest in like any like real conversation, or people that are only there to like be edgy, I think that it's an instant giveaway if you can see them. So you automatically rule them out for the most part. But for somebody that is being dishonest, like if they're like are trying to argue with you, like trying to convert you to a religion, or if they're really it's like steadfast in their position of say like anti-vax or anti-GMO or something like that, then yeah, those people are going to be, nothing's going to stop them. But I think it does automatically rule out all of the more annoying things that people just aren't really even trying. They're just there to like get a rise or just to have fun.
Yeah. Anything? I guess we can wrap this up. What more do you have to relate to us, Giggler? Will there be a part 2? Since
hopefully,
yeah.
It's still going. It just happened 2 days ago.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Next time, Giggler next time we'll have the Mormon Giggler on
We'll talk about your conversion process. That's so good.
Yeah.
Man.
Are you gonna?
It's funny because my mom is afraid I'm going to become a Mormon. My wife is afraid that I'm just bullying these kids. And I think it's evidence that my wife knows me better now than my own mother does.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. For sure. What do you want? What's Stick saying?
Oh, so Sticks is responding to Tub saying, how is that different from online if it's in person versus, I guess, in voice or in text? He didn't make it clear because we're all online. But I think that, and Sticks said the primary benefit is that just online is they can just leave, right? So like online, you can just instantly disappear. You don't have to be like, you don't have to walk away. You don't have to call an Uber or a cab or drive away or bike away with your helmet or anything like that. You can just not be there anymore. You can just ignore them. They won't even know that you're watching, even though you're ignoring them, right? So I mean, I think that's a big difference, is that when you're done with the conversation, you can just be done with it without the other person having any way of, making you be part of it again. I think all of these things play to it being different and in person or in video rather than just text or voice, where you can just kind of pretend disappear, right? Just not be involved in it anymore. I think it makes a big difference in how you approach the conversation, or how you see your other people in the conversation. Drop something.
Good. Well, I mean, we love for you to come back. We'll do another part 2 sometime in the future, just to explore more adventures of Giggler and the Mormons. Ooh, I should have just titled it that.
You should write a book.
You should write a book.
If I'm ever going to write a book, it's going to be about raising 3 kids in a split religious home.
That's boring.
My wife is Christian. I mean, we don't talk about it much because she's Christian, and she's told me explicitly that she believes in God, but we don't talk about it ever. She doesn't go to church. Her family only ever goes to church on holidays now. It depends. When they're doing good financially and they're feeling happy and they're feeling good, they go to church all the time. But when they're feeling down and they're not doing so well and their businesses aren't doing very well, they never go to church.
That's so weird. I always feel like it's the opposite.
Yeah, so they're more like when they're in a good mood, then they give more praise. It's the opposite of what I see in like the more downtrodden communities where when things are going bad, they look up for help and hope.
Exactly.
Right. This is the opposite. When things are going good, they give thanks and appreciation. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
But so she's. I wouldn't say she's religious, but she does believe in God. She's Christian. We never really talked about raising our kids that way or anything like that. But her sister, who has a kid older than ours, her husband is atheist and not open about it, but he's made it abundantly clear that his kid's not going to church. He's not going to church. Like, don't even bother trying. So their family is already accustomed to that type of behavior. So we don't talk about it, and it's not really a thing that gets brought up. And church on a Sunday morning seems like a waste of time when you can just sleep in. That's the level of respect given here. But
taking our kids to church, and she wants to see them speak in tongues.
Oh my goodness! Like what? Just say like, hey, when I said I want our kids to be bilingual, that's not what I meant.
That's hilarious.
Dang, Justin. Good job. Well, this has been fun. I like this. Thank you. We'll have you talk about this again, maybe in a month.
Yeah,
when we have some more material.
Yeah, Boris said, you're not getting me to worship you if you make it shitty for me. Like, right? Like, you could be almighty, bro, but like, don't expect me to look up to you if my life is going bad. Not if you're telling me you have any control over it.
Scripture says you can't fleece God.
Yeah, well.
Oh, well.
Everything.
The 40,000 denominations of religion say otherwise.
Well, as Stidix has said, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We're doing this every Thursday at 6:30. 6:30.
Christ, what time zone are you in? Where do you live?
California. That's the time zone. That's the only time zone that exists.
I understand you believe that. We're gonna take the giggler approach. What if you add 3 hours to that? What time zone would that be?
It doesn't exist. That's not in my doctrine of California.
Jesus.
Exactly.
Jesus, baby H Christ.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
9:30 EST. For the people that exist on the East Coast. Jeez.
Whatever that is. 6:30. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.